Naomi wasn't looking for love, faith, or self-discovery. She was just trying to escape. Far away from the cold tensions of Jerusalem, the constant scrutiny of her community, and her father's high expectations, she had booked her flight to Indonesia in a haze of restlessness. No plans. No itinerary. Just a longing to breathe differently. The air in her hometown felt dense with rules, heritage, and unresolved pressure. She wanted to be anonymous, invisible, forgettable. But the universe had other plans. It was her second day in Yogyakarta. The city was humid and bursting with color. Tourists flocked to famous temples and food stalls. Naomi, dressed in a loose white shirt and light linen pants, wandered off the main streets into quieter alleys where old houses leaned into one another, their wooden shutters slightly ajar like secrets not yet fully told. She didn't intend to walk far. The sun was fierce, and her energy had already drained. But curiosity, as always, pulled her forward. That's when it happened. With a sharp snap, the strap of her sandal gave way. She paused mid-step and looked down, stunned. For a moment, she simply stared at her foot. Then she laughed quietly, half amused, half exasperated. Of all the places to get stranded barefoot, it had to be in the middle of a quiet alley in a foreign country. She glanced around, expecting someone to offer help. But people walked by with distracted eyes and polite indifference. The quiet settled around her like a sigh. And then, he appeared. A man emerged from a small, shaded workshop at the end of the alley. He wore a worn gray shirt and black trousers, stained with traces of glue and dust. His hands were calloused and busy, still holding part of a shoe. His forehead glistened with sweat, but his eyes were gentle. When he spoke, his voice was low and careful, almost hesitant. "Can I help you?" Naomi blinked. "My sandal broke," she said, lifting her foot awkwardly. "I'm not sure how to get back." The man studied her foot for a second, then smiled. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a wooden bench outside his shop. "I'll fix it." Naomi hesitated. Back home, she would have already called a cab or bought new sandals. But something about the man's presence felt different. Safe. Unpretentious. She took a seat. "I'm Arkan," he said as he crouched before her. "Naomi. From? Israel." He nodded without pause. No reaction. No judgment. Just acceptance. It surprised her. In many places, saying, "Israel," was like throwing a rock into still water. Ripples of tension would follow. But not here. Not with him. The shop behind Arkan was a humble space. Shelves lined with sandals, boots, and worn shoes filled the walls. An old fan whirred lazily. A calendar hung crooked on a rusty nail, and a dusty radio played soft dangdut music in the background. The scent of leather, glue, and oil filled the air, oddly comforting. "You travel alone?" Arkan asked, gently examining the broken strap. "Yes," she replied. "I needed a break from home. Just wanted to be far away for a while." He nodded again, not pressing for more. Naomi watched his hands as he worked. There were no machines, just needle, thread, glue, and practiced precision. In her world, broken things were replaced, not repaired. But here, everything was stitched back together. It felt symbolic in a way she couldn't explain. "How long you stay?" he asked. "Just a few days." "First time in Indonesia?" "Yes." "It's different. Warmer. Not just the weather, but everything." Arkan gave a small smile. "Indonesia teaches patience. And fixing." "Fixing?" He lifted her sandal, now fully repaired. "Sometimes, things don't need replacing. They just need care." She took the sandal, her fingers brushing against his for a fleeting moment. "How much?" "No charge." "No, really, how much?" Arkan shook his head. "It's okay." Her eyes wandered to a small pair of children's shoes neatly placed on a high shelf, too small for display, yet cleaned with great care. "Those?" she asked softly. "My sister's," he replied, pausing. "She passed away some years ago." I kept them. Naomi lowered her gaze. I'm sorry. He said nothing. Just continued to clean his tools. After a moment, she stood. Thank you, Arkan. You're welcome, Naomi. She walked back through the alley, the sandal fitting more perfectly than before. But something else had changed too, something inside her. A strange warmth settled in her chest. Not attraction, not yet. But a curiosity. A thread gently tugging at her thoughts. That night, as she lay on her small guesthouse bed, she couldn't sleep. Arkan's workshop kept replaying in her mind, the soft whir of the fan, the scent of glue, the stillness of his presence. She stared at the repaired sandal placed by her door. And when she closed her eyes, she remembered his words again. Sometimes, things don't need replacing. They just need care. The next morning, Naomi woke before dawn, which was unusual for her. Something stirred within her, not quite restlessness, not quite excitement. She found herself standing in front of the mirror, gazing at her own reflection as if trying to recognize the person staring back. Why did she care about a cobbler in a quiet alley of Yogyakarta? Why had the memory of his workshop stayed with her so clearly, down to the thread, the shoes on the wall, the quiet kindness in his voice? She dressed in silence, tying her hair into a loose bun, and skipped the breakfast buffet at her guest house. Instead, she walked slowly through the still wet streets, the smell of last night's rain mixing with the warmth of fresh daybreak. The city hadn't fully woken up yet. Street vendors were setting up carts, children dragging school bags behind them, the call to far prayer still echoing in the background like a lullaby fading into sunrise. Her feet, almost instinctively, carried her back to the alley. Arkan was there, just like yesterday, seated cross-legged on the same wooden bench, bent over a pair of old boots. His concentration was intense, his fingers moving with methodical grace. Naomi paused a few steps away, hesitant, suddenly unsure of herself. What was she doing? She cleared her throat softly. Morning. Arkan looked up, surprised for a brief moment, then smiled. Morning. Your sandals again? Naomi smiled, a little embarrassed. No. They're still perfect, thanks to you. He gestured toward the bench beside him. Then sit. No need for broken shoes to return. She chuckled and took the seat. For a while she watched him work. There was no music today, just the occasional clink of metal and the faint sound of the city waking behind them. Naomi found peace in the silence, a kind of stillness she hadn't felt in years. You always work alone? She asked, after a long pause. Yes, he replied. Since my father died. I run this shop. It keeps me grounded. Naomi nodded slowly. It's rare, where I come from. People don't fix things anymore. They replace, upgrade, discard. Arkan smiled softly. That's the difference between building and preserving. She looked at him thoughtfully. Do you ever feel like people are like that too? He paused mid-stitch. You mean broken people? Broken people. Broken beliefs. Broken dreams. Arkan glanced at her, then nodded. Maybe. But sometimes, when something breaks, it's not the end. It just needs a different kind of attention. Naomi felt the truth of his words settle in her chest like warm tea. She reached into her bag and pulled out a simple paper-wrapped parcel. I brought breakfast. Arkan raised an eyebrow. You brought food for your cobbler? You're not my cobbler, she replied, grinning. Just a friend I met through unfortunate footwear. He accepted the package and opened it gently. 2 slices of lightly toasted bread and a thermos of hot tea. From the guest house? No, she said. From the bakery next door. I like supporting people who work with their hands. They ate quietly. No small talk. No pretense. Just the kind of silence that feels less like a pause and more like an understanding. After breakfast, Arkan leaned back and asked, Do you miss home? Naomi looked down at her tea, then up at the cloudy morning sky. Yes. And no. My family is strict. Especially about faith. Traditions. Who we are, who we're not supposed to be. It gets hard to breathe sometimes. He nodded without pressing further. My father's a respected rabbi, she added. Everything we do is watched. Me being here, alone, is already a scandal waiting to erupt. Arkan didn't respond immediately. He simply continued stitching, and when he finally spoke, it was gentle. You don't look like someone running away. You look like someone searching. Naomi's lips curved into a faint smile. Maybe both. As she stood to leave, her eyes fell once again on the small pair of shoes on the shelf. I thought you said they were your sisters? They were. She passed away? Arkan nodded slowly. She was 10. Leukemia. She loved purple shoes. I made her that pair the week before she died. Naomi swallowed a lump in her throat. You kept them? I fix them once a year. Even though no one wears them. Just to remember. She felt her eyes sting with unspoken emotion. That's beautiful. That's faith, Arkan replied quietly. She turned to him. Is that what faith is? Remembering what's gone? No, he said. It's believing something still matters, even when it's no longer seen. That night, Naomi couldn't sleep. She sat cross-legged on her bed, scribbling into her leather-bound journal with restless hands. I don't know who he is, she wrote, but he speaks in a way that makes silence feel sacred. He sees things I didn't think were worth noticing. He repairs things, shoes, yes, but also something deeper. Something I haven't named yet. Then she closed the book, stood up, and opened the window. The sound of distant adhan reached her ears again. This time, she didn't shut it out. She listened. Rain fell gently over Yogyakarta the next morning. The alley was damp, its stones glistening under the muted light of a cloudy sky. Naomi walked slowly, carefully avoiding puddles, her steps familiar now. She clutched a small paper bag in her hand, warm bread and ginger tea. It wasn't much, but it felt intentional. Like a ritual. As she approached Arkan's workshop, she saw him already seated at his bench. His head was bowed, but not over shoes today. Instead, a small prayer mat was spread out in the corner of the shop, his body gently rising and falling in sujud. Naomi froze at the entrance, instinctively stopping herself from interrupting. The prayer was silent. No chanting. No raised hands. No theatrical gestures. Just movement, slow, deliberate, peaceful. It was unlike anything she had seen before. She had grown up in synagogues where prayer was loud, communal, filled with Hebrew songs. But this was like a conversation no one else was meant to hear. Naomi stood in silence, unsure whether to step back or stay. Her heart pounded not from fear, but from the intimacy of the moment. She felt as though she had wandered into sacred territory. So she simply watched. When Arkan finally ended his prayer and turned around, he blinked in surprise at the sight of her. You came early, he said, folding the mat. I didn't mean to interrupt, she replied, stepping forward. I didn't know you were praying. It's all right. It's part of my day, he said with a calm smile. 5 times, always. It keeps my heart clean. She handed him the paper bag. I brought breakfast again. Arkan took it gently. You'll spoil me. Naomi chuckled. Just think of it as thanks for letting me invade your peace. They sat and ate quietly, the soft patter of rain filling the silence between them. After a while, Naomi asked, In my family, we also pray. But it feels different. We read from books, we memorize words. It's more about remembering than feeling. Jewish? Arkan asked gently. She nodded. Since birth. My parents are very observant. We follow everything. But you don't sound sure. Naomi hesitated. I was. Maybe I still am. But I've always been told what to believe. Never allowed to wonder why. Or if. Arkan listened. He didn't interrupt. His hands kept working on a customer's shoe, but his attention never wavered. When I was little, she continued, my father told me to keep my distance from people outside our faith. Not out of hate, just fear. Fear that I'd be influenced. That I'd lose my path. Have you? I don't know, she whispered. Arkan looked up. You're not lost. You're just learning. Naomi blinked away the sudden sting in her eyes. Why do you speak like that? Like what? Like you've read the parts of me I haven't even opened. He smiled gently. Shoes tell stories, Naomi. So do eyes. That afternoon, they walked through a traditional market together. The place was alive. Colorful batik cloths fluttered in the wind, the scent of spices thick in the air, and the chaotic hum of bargaining filled every corner. Naomi followed Arkan closely, overwhelmed but fascinated. He greeted several vendors along the way, speaking in soft Javanese and exchanging smiles like old friends. They stopped at a kiosk filled with handmade fabrics. The owner, a cheerful older woman, chatted animatedly with Arkan. Then he turned to Naomi, holding up a purple batik shawl. My mother loved this color, he said. I think it would suit you. Naomi touched the fabric, soft, patterned with swirls of deep violet and gold. It was bold yet calming. She smiled. How much? I already paid, he said. She frowned. You didn't have to. I know. But I wanted to. That night, back in her room, Naomi stared at the batik cloth draped over a chair. She felt like it carried more than color. It carried meaning. A gesture. A thread. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mother. Where are you? Call immediately. Your father is worried. Naomi sighed. She didn't want to lie, but she wasn't ready to explain either. She typed a simple reply. I'm safe. Just exploring the city. Love you. But even that felt like a partial truth. Because she wasn't just exploring the city. She was exploring herself. The next day, Naomi didn't visit Arkan. She needed time. Not to run away, but to think. To breathe. She sat alone in a city park, watching children play near a fountain. In her lap rested a notebook, open to a blank page. She didn't write. Not yet. She just stared into the emptiness, trying to name the feeling that had been blooming inside her. Was it just admiration? Was it attraction? Was it something deeper, something she didn't have a word for in her native tongue? When she finally returned to her room, she opened her journal and began to write. He doesn't just fix shoes. He fixes silence. He fixes the way I look at people. At prayer. At kindness. At myself. I don't know what this is. But I'm not afraid of it. At the same moment, across the city, Arkan sat in his shop, staring at the prayer mat folded neatly on the shelf. He reached into his drawer and took out a small piece of paper he had saved long ago. His sister's handwriting, faded but still clear. Kindness is the only language that never needs translation. He smiled to himself, then looked toward the open door, as if expecting Naomi to walk in any second. And for the first time in years he hoped. The sun was low on the horizon when Naomi's phone rang again. She was sitting on the balcony of her guest house, watching the sky slowly bleed into shades of pink and burnt orange. Her fingers hovered over the screen when she saw the name, Father. A pang of guilt hit her chest. She hadn't spoken to him in days. She answered. Naomi. His voice was sharp, urgent. Where are you? I'm in Yogyakarta. I'm fine. You should have told us. Do you have any idea how much trouble this is causing? She didn't answer immediately. I've received a message from someone in the community. Her father continued. They saw you in a market. With a Muslim man. Naomi felt her throat tighten. He's just a friend, she said, voice calm but heavy. Just a friend? Her father echoed with disbelief. Naomi, you're walking on dangerous ground. This is not how we raised you. It's not about how I was raised, she said slowly. It's about how I feel now. There was silence. Then the kind of voice she feared most, not loud, not angry, but disappointed. Come home before Saturday. I'm booking your flight. She didn't respond. Naomi, he said sternly. This is not up for discussion. When the call ended, Naomi sat frozen. The world around her blurred. The birdsong, the laughter from the streets below, the fading warmth of the sky, none of it reached her. She packed slowly that night, folding her batik shawl with care. But her heart wasn't in it. The thought of returning to her old life, her old expectations, now felt like a cage. The next morning, just after sunrise, a familiar sound buzzed beneath her window. She looked down and saw Arkan's old motorbike waiting near the gate. He looked up and gave her a small, questioning smile. "Want breakfast?" he called. Without thinking, Naomi grabbed her scarf, slipped on her sandals, and rushed downstairs. They didn't speak much during the ride. The streets were quiet, the city just beginning to wake. As they drove past rice fields and winding village roads, Naomi felt her heart start to breathe again. Finally, they arrived at a little wooden house nestled at the edge of a hill. It was old, the paint chipped, the walls bare, but something about it felt hopeful. "This is mine," Arkan said. "Or it will be. I'm fixing it up to be my next workshop. But also more. More? A place where young people can learn. To build things with their hands. To slow down. To think." Naomi looked around, touched by his vision. "It's beautiful. Even in this state. It's real," he said. "And someday, I hope it becomes a place where people can start again." She turned to him. "And what about you? Do you want to start again?" Arkan met her gaze. "I want to. But not alone." Their eyes locked. No words were spoken. None were needed. Later that afternoon, it rained again. Naomi stood beneath the awning of a street vendor's stall, clutching a bag of souvenirs, small tokens from a place that had given her more than just memories. She glanced down at her feet and sighed. Her sandal had snapped again. Not badly, but enough to slow her down. She didn't need to call. Arkan appeared minutes later with an umbrella in hand, his jacket wet and smile intact. "You again," he teased. "You really need to teach me how to walk properly in Indonesia." He laughed and crouched to fix her sandal, right there on the sidewalk. "You do this for all your customers?" she asked, watching him work. "No. Just the ones who steal my peace." She blinked. "Peace?" Arkan stood up slowly, meeting her gaze. "You came into my life like rain after drought, Naomi. I didn't expect you. But I think I was waiting for you long before I knew it." Naomi didn't know what to say. So she didn't say anything. She just slipped her arm into his and walked beside him under the umbrella. The world outside was gray and wet, but inside that small circle of shared space, it felt like home. That evening, back at the guest house, Naomi pulled out the Qur'an translation she had bought from a small bookstore days earlier. She hadn't dared open it until now. She flipped to a random page. "Indeed, those who have believed and done righteous deeds, the most merciful will appoint for them affection." Surah Maryam 19 hours 96 minutes. Her eyes welled with tears. Not punishment. Not fear. But affection. She kept reading. The words spoke of mercy, surrender, truth, and peace. They didn't demand, they invited. Gently. With dignity. That night, Naomi prayed for the first time in her life without a book, without rules, without anyone watching. She sat on the floor, her forehead resting on her knees, and whispered, "I don't know what I am. But I know who I want to be. And I know what feels true." The next day, she visited Arkan's new workshop alone. He was sweeping the floor, preparing the space. "I want to tell you something," she said. He looked up, sensing the shift in her tone. "I've been reading. Not just the Qur'an, but about Islam. About your prophet. About prayer. About surrender." Arkan waited. "I don't have all the answers yet. But I believe in what you've shown me. I believe in peace. In truth. In one God." She took a deep breath. "I want to become Muslim." His eyes filled with quiet emotion. He walked toward her slowly, respectfully, not touching, not assuming, just holding space. "Are you sure?" he asked gently. "Yes," she said. "And I want you to be there when I say my shahada." Arkan smiled, tears welling in his eyes. Then we start again. From here. Together. The masjid was quiet that morning, its white walls glowing under the soft touch of early sunlight. Naomi stood in the small women's prayer area, her heart pounding like a drum beneath her modest beige abaya. A white scarf covered her hair. She had chosen the outfit herself, wanting to approach this moment with sincerity and dignity. A kind older woman from the mosque stood beside her, gently holding her hand. "Are you ready?" she asked in soft Bahasa-accented English. Naomi nodded. She wasn't sure if what she felt was fear or release. Her eyes welled up. "I am," she whispered. From the men's side of the masjid, she could hear the imam's calm voice guiding her through the shahada. Her voice trembled slightly but didn't waver. "I bear witness that there is no God but Allah. And I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah." Tears slipped down her cheeks as she repeated the words. Not out of sadness. Not even out of confusion. But because for the first time in her life, she felt light. Not judged. Not performing. Just true. The imam announced her new name. Fatima. She had chosen it herself, drawn to the strength and grace of the Prophet's daughter. When she stepped out of the masjid, Arkan was waiting beneath the banyan tree. He wore a clean white shirt and simple black pants. His smile was wide, but his eyes shimmered with quiet awe. Naomi, now Fatima, walked up to him slowly. The world seemed hushed. "I did it," she said. Arkan placed a hand over his heart. "You were always on this path. You just didn't know it yet." She reached out and took his hand for the first time in public. There was no fear, no hesitation. "I want to stay," she said. "Not just in Indonesia, but with you." The nikah was simple. No grand decorations. No procession. Just a small room in the masjid office, 2 witnesses, the imam, and a handful of Arkan's friends from the community. Fatima wore a white dress with soft embroidery, gifted by one of the older ladies who had taken her under her wing. Arkan wore a traditional Indonesian baju koko and a white songkok on his head. When the imam asked Arkan if he accepted Fatima as his wife, his voice didn't shake. "I accept, with all my heart." When the dua was recited, Fatima closed her eyes and let every word sink in like rain falling on dry earth. There were no cameras. No music. But in her heart, it was the most beautiful celebration she could ever imagine. Their life didn't begin in luxury. They moved into the small wooden house Arkan had been restoring, the one he had once shown her on that misty morning ride. The workshop was still unfinished. The paint hadn't been done. The roof leaked when it rained too hard. But it was theirs. Together they worked. Fatima began helping local girls learn English. She volunteered at a small village school. She spent afternoons kneading dough with Arkan's neighbors, learning how to make tempeh and sambal. She stumbled over words in Bahasa Indonesia, laughed at herself, and slowly began to belong. Arkan's new workshop, Rumah Sol, became more than just a shoemaker's place. It became a learning space. A meeting point. A tiny sanctuary. In the evenings, when the sky burned orange and cicadas filled the air with their songs, Fatima and Arkan would sit on the front steps, sipping warm ginger tea. Sometimes they talked about the past. "I never thought I'd find this kind of peace," she confessed once. Arkan smiled. "Peace is not something you find. It's something you remember." "And love?" she asked. He reached over, touching her fingers softly. "Love is when remembering feels like home." One afternoon, months later, a letter arrived from Jerusalem. It wasn't angry. It wasn't warm either. It simply said, "We don't understand. But we pray you are safe. We miss you." Fatima read it slowly, then folded it with care. "They haven't disowned me," she told Arkan. "Maybe they never could," he replied. "Maybe they're trying, in their own way, to reach out." She nodded. "One day, I hope they'll meet you. And see what I see." "And what is that?" he asked with a teasing smile. She leaned closer, resting her head on his shoulder. A man who fixes things. Even hearts. Years passed. Fatima's story became one of quiet inspiration in their town. She never sought to preach. She didn't argue. She just lived. Her neighbors respected her for her gentleness, her clarity, and her sincere dedication to her faith. Sometimes, foreign tourists would wander into Ruma's soul needing repairs, and they'd see a woman in hijab speaking soft Baisa and sipping tea with the cobbler. They would ask, "Are you from here?" And she would smile and say, "Now I am." One day, as the sun set over the rice fields and the call to Maghrib echoed through the hills, Fatima stood beside Arkan in prayer. Their movements were slow, synchronized, full of grace. She had once said that she didn't know how to pray. That it felt foreign. That it wasn't her language. But now, she spoke with her soul. And when she lowered her head to the ground in sujud, she felt nothing but freedom. Naomi never returned to being Naomi. She kept her past as part of her story, but never as her identity. She became Fatima not only by name, but by conviction. By softness. By strength. Her love story was not one of fairy tales, grand proposals, or dramatic obstacles. It was a quiet miracle, built on sincerity, truth, and the courage to surrender. And as for Arkan? He kept repairing shoes. But people said his hands worked differently now. As if he wasn't just fixing what was broken, but protecting what was sacred.